there's a lot of controversy about what exactly happened and how it happened. But in the video, you can see the teens, like, he trips and the teens push him, and then there's a lot of them around him, and he's testimony talking about how he was fearing for his life and everything, and he had a knife from cutting the ropes to tie around tubes, and he just started stabbing the kids.
Oh my gosh.
And I think there's like 2 or 3 injuries and 1 death. And it's like big news because, I mean, first of all, there's like a video of it, which is insane.
Well, yeah.
But also
strong evidence there.
Yeah. Prioritizing
dangerous drug and product cases.
Good day, everybody. Before we get into the episode, I do have a massive, massive favor to ask. Wherever you're watching this, scroll down. Find the review section, 5 stars. There's a like, dislike button. Preferably choose the like button. Comment section, if you can throw a comment in there, like, hey, Ben, I listened to you. Here's a comment, or whatever you want to throw down there. Share, send to your friends. Anything you can do, we would really appreciate it. All right, back to the episode. Have a good one. Welcome back, everybody. Another week, another episode. How you doing? How you feeling? How was your weekend?
Well, weekend was a little calm and slow. The last couple of weeks have been kind of a whirlwind. Feels like we haven't been doing this for a while because we haven't.
Yeah.
We kind of crammed in a few because both of us were traveling, and so it's been a little busy. It's been a rough couple of weeks, actually. So it's kind of good to get back to the swing of things, back to real life, back to the podcast.
Yep, yeah. The routine. It has been a crazy few weeks. We did record in advance just so we didn't miss any episodes. This is very recent. This is a recent episode, but the previous one we recorded in advance. I was in New York for NFT NYC, which was it was a blast. It was good. I think seeing everyone, I say this every time, but seeing people that you haven't seen in a long time, right? You work with, blah, 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 blah. It's always good vibes. This year there was some noteworthy events of the trip. Real quick, I'll summarize it. There's a Magic Eden yacht party.
Oh, there's always a yacht party, right? Is it always Magic Eden that does the yacht?
Yes. Well, it started out because they did it in like 21, and then obviously when you say yacht party, it's like, holy shit, right? Everyone gets really excited. It's great branding.
Yeah.
And they had a massive, massive boat the first time, and this time they did the same one. But it was last year for Breakpoint when I was in Amsterdam. They had a yacht party. Amsterdam doesn't have the same size yachts as New York does. The Amsterdam was more of like a dinghy than anything.
Oh, a dinghy party.
Yeah, no,
That'd be a little crowded.
Oh, it was body to body in there. There was one bar compared to this one that was 3 floors. It was almost a cruise ship.
Yeah. Wow.
There's an open bar on every floor, and then they actually reiterated this time because last time they went sailing and it was like 3 hours, and they didn't have any food. Oh. And so there was this massive like wave of complaints on Twitter of like Magic Eden kidnapped us for the night. We were starving on the boat. And I think it started out they only had a chocolate fountain. So
oh my God.
So like the first 15, 30 minutes of the original yacht party, people just deleted the chocolate fountain because there's nothing else. Which honestly, no matter how hungry I was, I don't know if I would be dipping into a public chocolate fountain, honestly.
I don't know. Hot chocolate's one of those things. I'm not too picky. If it's chocolate, it could be on the ground for a while. The 5-second rule doesn't count.
That's true. Maybe it's one of those things like alcohol where it naturally cleans itself.
Well, and if it's a fountain, it's hot, so maybe it's killing some of the germs by flowing.
I guess so. It's a little cope, but it's all right.
Fishing off the side of the yacht for sustenance.
Having to chef it up. Some fresh sushi. No, this time they did have open catering. They had catering for everything and tacos, which, I mean, okay, it's a good. Maybe this isn't even Mexican side of me. I just feel like if you're buying Old El Paso hard shell tacos, you're doing something wrong. I mean, they're just like, especially if there's a catering company doing this. Like, are you kidding? Like, at least just give me some cold flour tortillas and they'll be better. And it was actually funny too because Christina's a massive pizza bagel fan, and for God knows why they were walking around with fresh pizza
Oh
bagels.
my
Not
gosh.
not homemade. No, they just bought like a 60 pack, and they
Like
were
Costco version,
yeah.
heat them up in the microwave
Yeah.
and serve them up.
Which honestly, thinking back, it was a fantastic idea because they're really playing towards their audience here. I mean, they're playing towards crypto guys that don't leave their house, they don't
Okay,
leave their
this is what
room.
they normally survive
Yeah,
on. It's
yeah.
like
I mean, if there's some of them that they're running purely off Hot Pockets and pizza bagels.
they
So
felt
then,
comfortable.
yeah, they know their audience, and it was unfortunate as well is that the day of his yacht party was Wednesday, and it was the rainiest and windiest it ever was. We didn't even take off. We were planning on taking off, or the plans was to take off. Didn't take off. It was too choppy, and it's the first time I've ever heard it's raining sideways. I've never heard that before. And
Yeah.
now I realize it's because there was a massive line and there was a good like overhang, a roof over, but it was
Yeah,
so
the
windy.
windy rain.
Yeah, there we go. It was so windy that yeah, there was no cover. It was just like pelting you in the side of the face, and there's no avoiding it. Overall, it was a good event. Hung out with a lot of people, saw a lot of old friends, made a lot of good connections, networked a lot, went to the Solana Foundation offices. I think that was like what really feels good about these events is you get to have fun, but then you also get to network and feel like you're being productive at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time.
and keep it tax deductible.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I need to keep track of that. Speaking of it, just had to file an extension, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, New York was a great time. I got back Sunday night, and then just kind of getting back in the groove of things. Like you said, routine's healthy, routine's nice, and we've been out of sync for a little bit, so now we're back.
Yeah, we are back. We're back, and I'm back from Las Vegas. So a little bit shorter trip than you had, but I was there Wednesday through Saturday. Well, came back Saturday for Mass Torts Made Perfect, which was very productive. We're going to be talking, actually, most of the show today, we're going to be updating on all of the pending cases. And so that will be helpful, hopefully. But yeah, Vegas was good. We always manage to combine some fun. We started out seeing Ka, which is one of the Cirque du Soleil shows.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's the only one that we had not seen yet, and it's been on. I mean, that show has been running for probably 20 years, but for some reason we hadn't seen that one yet, and that was very good the first night. And then let's see, Thursday night we had a business dinner. And then Friday night we had a couple friends who were going to be up in Vegas, and we got to meet them and have dinner at Sinatra's, which is a very nice kind of old school Italian, very old Vegas with, Sinatra crooning in the background kind of story.
sounds like good
And we
vibes.
also, actually, I do have to say, I don't even know if I told you this, we went to the Sphere.
Oh, how was that?
Yeah, well, interesting. I would have to say that I would probably give it a 1 star. So, yeah, I know people are kind of surprised about that. The last time we were there, it had just opened, and we went and we walked around the outside, and it's really amazing seeing it from outside. Just the light show that's on the on the Sphere is pretty amazing. We contemplated going to the concert. It was U2, which I'm not a big fan. I probably don't even really know their
I
songs.
feel like U2 isn't that supposed to be like the audio Bible for older folk there?
Well, I think it's very 90s. I think it's a little bit, people probably a little bit younger than me are chuckling over there. But, well, I don't know their songs. And then the tickets are like, $1,300 a piece to see a concert.
Yeah, clearly audio Bible for old people, $1,300. That's crazy.
It was nuts. But so this time they do it's called the Sphere Experience. And so you can get tickets for that. And it's basically, you get the tour of the whole facility. There are some kind of cool things. And then you see a movie, and the movie that is playing, hopefully they will change it, is called Postcard from Earth. And it's basically like a big IMAX.
Yeah.
So, which is cool. I mean, and I really like IMAX, but I've seen better IMAX, I have to say. But this one, the facility is interesting. There were a couple little stations of these robots talking to you, and they did this one that they were showing how they can separate the audio, by sections. So they had people stand, and I mean, it was basically, we were like maybe a foot away from this other group of people in these lines of light, and everybody heard the same speech in a different language.
That's crazy.
That was cool. I mean, you could kind of hear like blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
in the background, but you could clearly hear whatever language you were listening to, and then you could step into the next one. And, you're in English, and then you go and when it's Arabic, and then you go and it's French, and then you go and it's
crazy.
Spanish. So that part is cool. I think that the technology is pretty amazing. But the seats, and we got like we didn't get the top of the line seats. They were like $150.
Yeah.
The very cheapest are $40.
I was about to say, that's pretty uncharacteristic of you. Top of the line is...
Well, so here's the thing, and we were trying to like look at the seating and figure out, because you don't want to be too far down or too high up the way that it was set. So it seemed like about middle. Although I will say that I was seriously regretting not getting the VIP entry, because when we got there, so Vegas, it's usually like blasting hot this time of year. I mean, it was freezing cold. And it started raining, and you had to wait outside in this long, it was like a Disneyland winding roller coaster ride, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth,
And you waited in that?
We had to, yeah.
I would have just thrown my hands up.
If Peter was not persistent, we would have thrown our hands up and been done, I swear to you. But yeah, he's like, oh, come on, we're going to be moving soon. And I'm like, I'm freezing my ass off.
No, yeah, that's shocking.
So at that point, I would have paid an extra 100, 150, whatever, just to walk in the door and have
That's
the
the
VIP.
mother I know right there.
Yeah. Well, I had no idea. I thought it was just the seats. And then the show is basically an hour IMAX. Again, good, but I think most people would say probably not $150 good.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Like, it's a $150 movie ticket.
Right. And and just the ordeal of getting in and out of there, and then it was a super woke kind of story. I mean, basically the gist of it. Spoiler alert: if you're going to go, maybe just pause this for a few minutes and not listen, but a few seconds. But basically, it's like, we fucked up the Earth because we used and abused her, and now you have to go to other planets and let Earth rejuvenate before anybody can come back and live here again.
Yeah.
So it was kind of...
I think there's been like at least 5 or 6 different movies that's played off that exact same.
Really? Well, I haven't seen them. I thought it was very preachy, and I'm as liberal as they come, and so afterwards, Peter and I were kind of like, wow, maybe we should have like read the reviews before we went and did that. So then we did read the reviews, and people were just like losing their shit. They were...
Well, I feel like if you're in an atmosphere like that for an IMAX, why not play a movie like fucking Godzilla? The new Godzilla. Imagine that. You're in this massive dome, and then you have Godzilla, and you get to really see the magnitude of the beast.
Well, you'd have to create it because then like the seats rumble a little bit, and the wind blows. But we were at one. I don't even remember where we were, but we saw an IMAX, and it was like these bears were pulling fish out of salmon out of the river.
That. Give me Godzilla.
Well, but it was kind of cool because what happened? This bird comes down and something pokes you in the back of your seat, pokes you, and then you got splashed with water. So there were some that had, a lot of these regular old IMAX things have some pretty, intense effects. And so this one, your seat rumbled a little bit, like when the elephant walked by, or when like the big trains came by, or the spaceship took off, because of course you were flying in a spaceship at one point. Or something.
Yeah, a little overplayed again.
A little overplayed. So anyway, I would just say, it's a huge touristy thing. Huge touristy thing.
Seems like it. That actually did remind me is that this week, Salon has been going kind of crazy. The meme coins and everything. They actually fundraised, like community raised for one of these meme coins. It's called Whiff. It's dog whiff hat, and it's just a dog with a hat on.
Okay.
The community raised $2 million to put the picture of the dog on the Las Vegas Dome.
Oh, on the Sphere.
On the Sphere, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because you can pay to do that.
Yeah, kind of like, I guess you could probably, I wonder if they'll do like advertising, like there'll be like,
100%.
attorneys, law firms
Yeah.
blasting, oh gosh.
You can pay for, it's disgussingly expensive,
Sure.
obviously, but yeah, they community, like just people donating. I also had a buddy.
So the dog just showed up on there?
Yeah.
Did anybody even know what it was? I wouldn't have recognized it.
I don't think it's happened yet. But they finished like the fundraising where they actually hit it, because everyone, they started, it was like 2.5 million, and people were like, no one's going to donate this much. But then, thousands of people donated. And
you could like feed people and save animals.
Yeah, but you could say that with like most of the things we spend money on. And
all right, fine. Yeah, I did do a little shopping.
I did also. I had a friend hit me up, and there's this like big kind of like joke in crypto where it's like once your IRL friends start texting you like, "Hey, are you still doing that crypto thing?" Then it's like, "Oh my God, we're near the top." I had a buddy text me this week, and it's like, "Hey, are you still in Solana?" And I was like, "Oh, here we go. It's the first one." It's the first one.
All right.
Anyways, that's I actually do want to real quick go back to them. I want to check it out, but I'm going to petition to see full on the new Godzilla. I mean, I just think that would be incredible. I think that'd sell a lot of tickets. I'd pay 200. I'd pay 200 for that experience.
And get the VIP. Well, depending on the weather, you need the VIP entrance. Yeah. Just like.
Well, let's get right into it. So it seems like that today we're going to be covering a lot of the information that you learned at Mass Torts Made Perfect.
Yeah, and it's not so much, I guess, learning, but just kind of updates and status on cases, because, I mean, a lot of our listeners are involved in maybe one of these cases or interested in some of them. And so this will be a pretty good summary.
Yeah.
Before we jump into that, I do have a couple of updates on some, one other update that wasn't a current case, and that's the Tesla, because we've talked quite a bit about those lawsuits. And there was one of the self-driving car accident lawsuits, the death case. This was a 2018 accident, and they were just about literally the day before trial, and Tesla did settle the case. And it was a confidential settlement amount, so we don't know how much, but there's a lot of kind of talk about this because, of course, there are quite a few of these cases. And, questioning about whether the technology is sufficient and whether they're overplaying the technology and there's an issue of whether this guy was playing a video game at the time, and whether Tesla basically says you can, do whatever you want. You don't have to be driving the vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty hot case, and they, for some reason, didn't want it to go to the jury. So they did settle it the day before trial.
Well, I think this is pretty common for big businesses like this, right? I mean,
if they're confident, they're gonna, they're gonna try the case, and they'll yell and scream for months and years leading up. Yeah. We won our day in court, and we're going to prove that we didn't do anything wrong, and blah, 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 blah. If they were pretty sure they were going to win, yeah, and it also kind of sets the stage because there are a bunch of these other cases.
Yeah.
So we don't know how much it was, but I can't imagine it was too small for a death case that they would be willing to walk away. So.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it sets a precedent, and I'm sure the people that already have cases are keeping an eye on that and feeling pretty good about theirs. I did have a quick question and unrelated. Did you see the video about the old guy that got arrested and there was a trial for stabbing the teens in the river?
Oh, no.
Yeah, real quick, because this has been everywhere on lot of social media and whatnot, is there was these group of 5 or 6 different teens Salt River tubing.
Oh, so in Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in Phoenix, but they were tubing.
Or a similar kind of.
Yeah, it's like the same thing that you can get
that we do here.
And they were Salt River tubing and everything, and I guess it's on video too, is that this guy came over looking for his buddy's phone or something, and he had his phone in his hand in the plastic bag, and he dropped it, and then he was looking for it, and there's a lot of controversy about what exactly happened and how it happened, but in the video, you can see the teens, he trips and the teens push him, and then there's a lot of them around him, and his testimony talking about how he was fearing for his life and everything, and he had a knife from cutting the ropes to tie around tubes. And he just started stabbing the kid.
Oh my gosh.
And I think there's 2 or 3 injuries and 1 death. And it's big news because, first of all, there's a video of it, which is insane.
Well, yeah.
But also
strong evidence. Or...
Yeah. Well, also, and I think he was also an immigrant as well. And so there's a lot of controversy there. And anyways, I thought that was really interesting, and was curious if you'd seen it or anything like that.
Yeah, I have not. I've not seen that. And so the guy, he was just another participant in the tubing. He didn't have anything to do with work there or anything.
No, he was a participant in tubing, and there was also reports that he was walking around asking, he had asked those kids if there were any young girls around.
Oh,
and yeah, and it's a lot of conflicting reports. So anyone that I've a lot of sources. I'm not trying to, if I am wrong about anything, I'm not trying to be wrong about anything. But it's just a very interesting case, and there's a lot of I think it kind of goes back to self-defense because it's a very hot topic, I think, self-defense in the country.
Yeah. When you can defend yourself and what you're defending yourself. Yeah. Well, and those videos go to, certainly make a big difference when people say that they're fearing for their life. Does it, and a jury can actually watch that and say, does it look like he was truly at risk?
Well, I think that's an interesting idea because it's so subjective of fearing for your life, right? And what the situation that one person is going to be scared or have that fear, and it is very different than some
Absolutely.
different person being in the exact same situation.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. I have not seen that.
Anyways, I didn't want to get too off topic. Going back to updates on cases or cases we're handling.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them actually that this was something that came out just before I went to MTMP, and that's Mass Torts Made Perfect. Is so Zantac. We've talked about the Zantac cases, and there has been a partial settlement. And so one of the manufacturers, Sanofi, and this is a French manufacturer, is in the process of settling about 4,000 of the Zantac cancer claims. It's actually a small group of them. There's about 75,000 other claims that are pending. But Sanofi is saying that they were, the smallest of the manufacturers. So the least, so they want to get these cases settled. The other two big manufacturers are Pfizer and Boehringer Ingelheim, a German company. Those cases are not settled yet. But these are certainly, it's an ongoing litigation we've talked about, and it's this ranitidine that's in the Zantac medication, which was recalled, and it can potentially cause about 10 different cancers. But the primary ones that we're looking at are stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, bladder cancer, liver cancer, and pancreatic cancer. So again, we mentioned this a lot, but if you do have one of these cancers and you used Zantac, you don't want to delay. If you want to get involved in one of these lawsuits, it's important to do that sooner than later. Once these settlements start happening, it makes it much more difficult to get your case resolved without trying it individually.
And I did not realize this with this specific case, but all three manufacturers were making the same product here, right?
Yeah.
And they're all being sued for similar reasons, similar conditions, and side effects and everything along those lines.
Right. Well, and so they would have different brands. Like, you'll have like the Walmart brand, and you'll have like the Target brand, and then you'll have the official, Zantac. But say they were basically all selling the same product. And so like you'll see that a lot, like even like with the hernia mesh, where there's like say 30 different products in the litigation, and there are multiple different manufacturers of those products. And so oftentimes one manufacturer, or like with the transvaginal mesh, I mean, that happened. One of the manufacturers settled the case like probably 3 years before Johnson & Johnson ever settled theirs. And basically the claims were very similar. The problems with, it's very similar product, just manufactured by these different companies. And you see one that settles and they're like, let's be done with this.
Yeah.
And literally, I think it was 3 or 4 years later, and Johnson & Johnson, of course, was the last one to settle.
I was going to ask, is it typical for kind of the smaller manufacturers to give in earlier, to settle earlier, and almost foreshadow these larger corporations that have more incentive to kind of draw it out longer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily smaller ones. It's really just kind of like the asshole ones, and Johnson & Johnson falls into that category. Because there are some of the big ones, too, that just say, hey, we're going to pay these one way or the other. Let's be done with it. But then it's like, with Johnson & Johnson, where you're talking about dragging, we'll talk about the talc in a minute, but drag that out for 10 years, and they say, we're just going to keep fighting and grinding you into the ground and letting your patients, your clients die. We're just going to do that. That's the way that we play this game. That's the way we roll.
Slimy shit.
It's really slimy. And then other companies are like, look, it's business, and we're going to have to pay this one way or the other. Let's go ahead and get it off our books and be reasonable and get the case settled. So I don't think it's the size. I think it's the
the assholeness of it.
The level of.
I mean, either way, they're POSs, pardon my language here, for a lot of these cases. But I think there is a certain amount of like respect where it's like, okay, at least you recognize that you shit the sheets a bit here, and you're willing to do your part and not just be a complete asshole for years on end. At least admit you're wrong and do your best to do right by the victims.
Yeah. Well, and the reality too is that even in these settlements or the earlier settlements, they never admit they're wrong. Now, sometimes they'll have like a recalled product or something along those lines. But in a lot of these, they'll just say, well, we're not going to admit that we're wrong, but we are going to compromise this, and that's a good business decision, and we don't want to tie up time and money and litigation and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they're not going to pay a frivolous case that they can get dismissed. Yeah. I mean, they're not just going to give away money. That's not what these people are doing. But I mean, some companies really, I think act in a more ethical, responsible responsible manner, and it's responsible also to their shareholders, because you get these big risks. If you hold out and you get these billion-dollar verdicts, that's more harmful than just figuring out an amount of money that is a good compromise, and getting the case done and taking that risk away.
Well, you'd imagine companies like Johnson & Johnson, because I think Johnson & Johnson is like kind of one of the top ones, right? And they're the ones that I would imagine would be even more, I guess, listening to their stockholders, listening to the shareholders, but yet they're also the ones that draw it out as long as possible. And,
Try to file bankruptcy.
yeah. It's like, really, this is in the best interest of the shareholders? It's hard to believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's good to see. Zantac, Sanofi?
Sanofi.
Sanofi. Santa Fe. Sanofi. That's
Sanofi,
good.
not Santa Fe. So
Yeah.
it's Sanofi. It's a French company. Yeah, in fact, Sanofi is the company that manufactured Taxotere, so the breast cancer drug that caused permanent rather than temporary hair loss.
I had no idea
So that was
about
the
that.
other. That was actually the only other litigation that I think I've been involved in directly with Sanofi.
That's crazy. We should do an episode on some of the previous cases that you had, because I mean that's an interesting one. And yeah. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into that one. We'll leave
All
it
right.
for another episode.
Yeah.
Whoa, real quick before we get back into the episode, I do have a quick favor to ask. Big favor. Wherever you're watching this, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, maybe Spotify, maybe iTunes Music, there probably are some stars somewhere on your screen, very similar to the ones I'm wearing on my shirt. If you're listening, just imagine a very handsome man in a star shirt. If you could give us 4, 5 stars, we would greatly appreciate it. It goes a very long way. And a like as well, a comment, any questions you have, we're always here, and the little things matter a lot. Thanks a lot, and see you in the episode.
Okay, well, let's jump into some of the updates. And actually, the first one that I have on my list here is talc. And we've talked about that it's been going on for over 10 years. There's over 100,000 ovarian cancer claims pending, still dragging out. But one of the kind of the interesting things that we were talking about, an angle that we haven't really discussed here, is that, when they were trying to do this whole bankruptcy deal, and they were talking about, we're offering, $8.9 billion, and that's so much money, and these people are being unreasonable and trying to take too much. But what they were saying is that if you break this down to the actual how many cases there were, what they were proposing was about a $50,000 settlement per cancer client. Most of these, and ovarian cancer is a deadly cancer. Yeah. So these are death cases. And they were trying to have, expecting the clients were going to get 50,000. And one of the things about this too is that, you have to think a good part of somebody's claim is always going to be their medical expenses. If you have ovarian cancer, you could have $1 million in medical expenses if you live for a while with it. Wow. It's a lot of treatment. And, so $50,000, you're not even coming close to probably getting the average person's medical expenses.
Yeah, so that's apart from medical expenses, right? That's not even just like...
No, they're saying the total. And then you have an attorney who's, the attorney's fees are off of that. You have to pay back medical liens out of that. Basically, the people would have been walking away with nothing. Debt. Right.
They've been walking away in debt.
With the negative. And why are they, and here they've waited for 10 years, and there's been all of these big verdicts and some really, and over the other thing too is that, they drag it out for 10 years and the evidence against them actually gets better and stronger, the more of these studies. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. That happens often in litigation. But they were also they were comparing it to another case where, that I was involved in, which was the Actos bladder cancer cases. Mm-hmm. And so that was a diabetes drug that was, and of course there's lots of diabetes medications. So if there's one that causes cancer, don't take that one. You got other options. And in those cases, the average settlement was $240,000. But the important thing to look at there is that bladder cancer, first of all, it's a relatively common cancer. Mostly men get it, and it is rarely fatal. And again, if you catch it early, it's rarely fatal. And so the medical expenses weren't huge, and most people didn't die. And they got $240,000 from a much smaller company. And so, it just shows that Johnson & Johnson's jumping around screaming, "Oh, we offered so much money, and you guys, you're just so greedy you won't take a reasonable settlement. What they were offering was not a reasonable settlement. It's just it's offensive.
Yeah, no, I mean it is, and on the back end they're like they know how absurd it is, they know
Oh,
how unreasonable
totally.
it is, but then, and I mean I don't expect them to come out and say, yeah, we offered you guys a shit deal. Obviously they're gonna try to play it up, but also don't offer such a shit deal.
Right, right. And that's the whole thing. I mean, you want to file bankruptcy, but you can't file bankruptcy because you're not broke. You do have enough money to pay more. Let's just get this done. And so, the good thing here, I mean, it's been a really long, painful journey for everybody involved. But I mean, there are lots of trials coming up, and the plaintiffs bar, the attorneys involved in this have really stuck together. They've done training. I mean, these cases, we're going to keep fighting this stuff. And so it was a little bit optimistic. I mean, of course, I mean, it's all like, wow, here we are 10 years later. But at the same time, it was a pretty good energy that, they're not getting away with this. People aren't caving. We're going to keep a good fight going.
Well, and you brought up a good point. As time goes on, more evidence comes up. And
It
especially
usually help them.
No, not at all. I mean, with talc specifically, where there is a mountain evidence, and I know like they have to, the higher ups have to have seen this back end. They knew how much evidence there was when these cases first came up. You would think that they would try to nip it in the bud and be like, okay, before they realize just how bad this actually is, let's just try to like get it over with. But instead, they're just drawing it out as long as possible. The evidence is stacking up, and then people are realizing just how shitty they are.
Yeah, well, and they finally stopped selling it.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe they wouldn't have even done that had this been settled. I mean, that just happened in 2023.
Yeah.
So 9 years into it. So
Crazy.
anyway, so that's kind of that. And of course, Ozempic is a big hot topic, one of the newer litigations, and one we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, if you've been following that. And it's moving quite fast now that it is a multi-district litigation.
And real quick, for anyone that does want to learn a little bit more about it, we will throw in a link in the description to our Ozempic episode, because we have a few Ozempic episodes, but I do know that there's one out there that we really go into depth, and it's a fascinating case. Fascinating.
It really is. And these cases, and the primary injuries that we're focused on are gastroparesis. I say gastroparesis. So that's like the stomach paralysis, which can be permanent, not reversible, bowel obstructions, gallbladder removal, and other GI issues that require surgery. But the thing about this, it got so much hype, so many, celebrities, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. And the problem is that this drug is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's just doing it way too well. And it's actually referred to as assisted anorexia. So I think that the important thing really to look at in this, and for anybody who's considering taking it, is that most people don't stay on it for more than a year. And it's one of these things where when you take it, you lose a lot of weight, but you lose more muscle than you lose fat.
Yeah. Also, you're not changing any like real habits or anything or ways
not.
of thinking. It's just it's like a Band-Aid fix.
Well, and so when you stop, and most people do stop within a year, then you will gain the weight back. And then the problem is that people then gain more fat back than muscle. And so what happens is at the end of whatever period where you took it, you actually are worse off than when you started. I mean, maybe you looked skinny for a few months in there, but and these are people who that's just assuming that you don't have one of these horrible problems that kills you or permanently debilitates you. That's just assuming you take it for a few months and then you go back, you're still worse off.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, now those cases are not ones where we're litigating, where, you took it for a while, you lost some weight, now you're worse off. But, but thank goodness those people don't have, this gastroparesis. I mean, these are life-changing or, life-ending conditions. So, so that's, it's a pretty hot one. A lot of people out there taking it, as we know. And there's about 100 cases that have been filed, but there are thousands in the wings waiting to be filed. And they're saying that probably within the year, there'll be 5,000 easily filed.
I'd be surprised if it's that low. That seems pretty low, honestly. I mean, this was something that we touched on where one of the first kind of mass tort cases and issues that has been exacerbated by social media.
Yeah,
That
hugely.
has
Yeah.
been made popular by social media, TikTok, influencers, celebrities, like all the whole nine yards, because we haven't seen any type of medication that has been this destructive, but has also been promoted this
So
much.
popular and off-label use. I mean, again, we
Yeah.
have to remember. I mean, a couple of these medications are now specifically for weight loss, but the actual Ozempic is not for weight loss. That's for type 2 diabetes, and so many people were getting it off-label that people who were diabetic and needed it couldn't get it.
Couldn't even get
You
it.
know, and then there's the whole thing with the compounding pharmacies mixing it up, and I mean, it's just, yeah, it's the big snowball nasty effect. But you know, the more we see. You know, I think there are going to be a lot of cases. I think the reason that the numbers are lower than you would expect is just because the only cases getting filed are these really
Yeah, I know.
horrendous injuries.
We touch on this is a lot of law firms are hold back because it does cost money, and they, you don't want to submit the iffy cases. You don't want to submit the ones where they may be able to poke holes on these initial
Yeah,
ones.
these are the strongest
the
cases.
strong ones. Which, and now that you mention it, 5,000, that actually is pretty impressive because those are the one, like that's a lot of strong home runners.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I just think that's going to keep growing. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like you mentioned, if when you, even if you're on it, best case scenario, you come back and you end up putting on more fat than you do muscle. It kind of reminds me of like the gastric bypass, where you can get this surgery and it does help, but if you don't change your habits, if you don't change your eating, it doesn't change anything. Your stomach's going to stretch back out, and you'll end up right where you were at just after surgery. And you can't go back and do it again. You'll end up, or it takes a while. You'll end up right back where you were at just a few months, few years later. And same thing with Ozempic. It helps for a little bit, but if you don't change those habits, and it doesn't.
Well, and it's so sad too, because I mean, even like with the gastric bypass, and then you hear these people, I mean, who have, I mean, real issues around food, and then they're trying to kind of trick the system and have, like having milkshakes and like these super high calorie things that you can, consume in smaller quantities
Yeah.
or get the best bang for your buck. And yeah, I mean, it's just we have we have a lot of issues in this country around food that needs to be dealt with in hopefully a non-surgical way.
Moving on, what other updates? Any info from Vegas you want to touch on?
Oh yeah, well there's
Let's keep going.
quite a few more. Yeah, CPAP, of course, that is going strong. And this is the one, and we actually, again, if you want to get some more information on that, we do a deep dive on CPAP is episode 7. Some of these, I think we'll need to do the link on the talc and the Ozempic, but
We're on 52 now. That's a year.
we're on 52. Yeah, it's crazy. I know. I was like, we talked about CPAP that long ago. That was episode 7. That was
single
like
digits. Holy.
it was really crazy. Well, and this has been going on for a while. They recalled these CPAP machines back in June of 2021. And just quick kind of reminder, the noise-reducing foam was deteriorating and being inhaled, and that can cause multiple cancers. It can cause problems anywhere from nasal irritation to death, so pretty wide range, and it affects more than 10 million people in the United States. And the thing about this one is, well, it actually just very recently, Philips has been banned from selling any products in the United States for at least 5 years because of this ordeal. Any products, yeah, bam, you're out of the United States because of how poorly they handled this whole situation.
Wait, so Johnson & Johnson hasn't gotten this ban? What the?
Right.
Me?
Oh yeah, no, they're
That's
but yeah,
insane.
Phillips is in. Yeah, so they're in big trouble. And the thing about these cases is that litigation has been going on since the fall of 2021. The MDL was formed. 10 million people in the United States who use these things, and again, cancers don't occur overnight. There's a latency period, and so cancers are getting diagnosed all the time. It's going to still keep going on. There's been a big delay in being able to get new machines and update the machines.
Well, and the machines that are being swapped out, they're not even completely fixed. It's just that there's a less likelihood of it obviously deteriorating if it's brand new.
Right.
So all you can do is keep, replacing it.
Well, and they're using different material now but there, just 10 million of them, and they didn't have the infrastructure to be able to, create new and correct them. So it's a big nightmare, and it's just a scary situation for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are going to be nervous for a while, because even if they've gotten a new one and they're not using it anymore, how many years did they use it? Are they being checked? Have they talking to their doctor, making sure that they're keeping an eye out for these potential cancers?
So what is it like on the plaintiff's back end side of things, where you guys have a case that is massive with the amount of users? Because CPAP machines are used for a wide variety of reasons. I mean, just sleep apnea is one of the most common ones, among a bunch of others. So that there's a ton of users, and then that the conditions that come from it have a latency period. It takes a while for these cancers to develop. Does that affect the planning and kind of thought process of these cases for the plaintiffs, when just how big it could be and how long it may take?
Yeah, actually, it's an excellent question. And I don't know if we've ever touched on this before, but what happens in a lot of these types of cases is that part of a global settlement oftentimes includes funds for medical monitoring, so that, again, if people have issues getting medical care and monitoring, that it compensates them, that there's a system set up to ensure that people who might have these problems get the treatment they need. And then also for future claims, there's usually a pile of money, a fund.
A room.
A fund.
They just fill up a room, throw some duffel bags in there.
Exactly. Some gold bars.
They just send the victims in, as much as you can carry.
30 seconds, whatever. Whatever those booths where the dollars fly around. Yeah, that would be something like
The cancer patient in there. Jesus.
That's
terrible.
what they would expect personal injury attorneys to do, these ambulance chasers we are. But but is part of the settlement is, in these kinds of cases, would include a fund for future claimants who are not yet diagnosed and who come in the future. Yeah.
The big thing there that I didn't know about was the checkups.
Yeah, the medical monitoring.
So if there is someone that is using a CPAP machine and they don't have any signs of it, and they are paying bills to go get it checked out, they're getting their lungs checked out, they have to use a CPAP machine, they're getting it replaced, but you never know. How can they access these checkup funds?
Well, so once there's a settlement, there's a whole process set up, and there are some companies that actually that's their business to do this. And the ones that I've been involved in the past have been more where it's like a standard blood test, where you need to check for, for example, like with the metal on metal hips, where you're looking for these elevated levels of chromium and cobalt in the blood. And so that's a pretty easy, straightforward one. You can go and they have different clinics set up that work with the company, that they pay them directly, get the blood test every 6 months or whatever it is. And so depending, and again, for like breast cancer situations, maybe it's a mammogram every 6 months as opposed to every year. So it's very specific to the kind of situation that you're dealing with, the kind of injury. And this one would be a complicated one because there are so many different cancers. Although, on that topic, and I don't know if I had mentioned this to you or not, but there's actually blood tests now that can test for cancer markers very early on.
Wow.
Yeah, actually. And so right now insurance doesn't cover it, but my doctor had recommended that I do it. It was like one of those New Year's things. I'm like, oh, rah, rah.
New Year's.
I know. It was like in January. He's like, oh, I recommend you do this. I'm like, oh, Happy New Year's to me.
Yeah.
But I did do the blood test, came out clear.
Nice.
Peter did it also. It doesn't test for everything, and it's one of those, the science that is developing, and it's getting more sensitive, but it can, detect some markers for a lot of different cancers early on. So I don't know, perhaps that's, one of the things that they would utilize in a situation either with like Zantac or CPAP.
Yeah. Yeah, and imagine lung problems too, because I remember you mentioning how they were finding like little fine pieces of literally the black material, the black foam,
from the foam.
and so like a blood test, that's cheap. You can put money aside, and it's pretty easy for people to go and get a blood test. But if it's a chest X-ray, if you really got to see what's going on in there to figure out if there are signs, that's going to be expensive on an individual basis.
Yeah, well, and biopsies and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. So they would have to set up a whole, it may be just a certain amount of compensation for whatever your regular physician is. But if somebody doesn't have a physician, you need to get them hooked up.
So it sounds like it adds another layer to the negotiation process.
Yeah, and again, in most of these, there's some element of that because they always, it's rare that you're going to have some product and every single person who had it and can confirm that they don't have a problem within X number of years. Yeah, so there's always some element of that built in. This one, but I think think, with the sheer number of people affected, and the really long latency in the condition, like with the hips, they said if it didn't, basically it was at 10 years, they wouldn't pay after about 10 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, these could be significantly longer. So.
And these are still in progress. These are still cases we're taking.
These are very active cases, and again, ones where they're going to be becoming cases regularly because you don't have a case until you get diagnosed.
Yeah. So if anyone is using a CPAP machine, definitely recommend just getting checked out in general.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because I mean, this is big, especially if you've been using this machine for years.
Yeah.
That's when the odds of getting that deterioration, getting that foam coming through is pretty high. So definitely go get checked out. And if you're curious about what exactly you should be asking for your doctor or concerned about what to be looking for, you can always reach out to us. But I'm sure there's also any attorneys.
Yeah, but reach out to us. I mean, go on our website. I mean,
you're already here.
We're doing this for other lawyers.
you're already here. You can just scroll down. There's a link.
We'll help you out. We'll get to this. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Again, just a quick reminder, wherever you're watching this, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever it is, I'm sure there's some type of review system, maybe a thumbs up in the corner of your screen, maybe a little speech bubble or the comment section. If you could throw a like, comment, review, we would really appreciate it. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure we cover everything here.
Yeah, so we will move on to boobs, Allergan breast implants.
Nice.
So, and that's one we talked about in episode 5 and also in 39. And this one is, this one's going on pretty actively right now. And this is the particular breast implants are textured, and they are resulting in a type of cancer called BIAACL, which is basically breast implant associated ALCL. So it's a very, very rare type of cancer. And pretty much all of it's going to be related to breast implants. I mean, hence the name breast implant associated. And again, this is one of these things where the longer they drag these things out, the more information comes out, and the more cases that are diagnosed. You're seeing that basically, if you get this disease, it's because you had these implants. Initially, when people started saying, hey, it looks like there might be a connection here, Allergan was trying to say, oh, yeah, maybe 1 in 3 million people will get this condition. And then, the numbers keep coming in, and then they're like, okay, well, 1 in a million. Still, that's a lot, right? And then more information comes in. It's 1 in hundreds of thousands. Now they're down to admitting it's 1 in 100.
Oh my God.
So
crazy.
Right?
That is magnitudes.
Right.
Magnitudes. And when you hear 1 in a million, even though those aren't great odds, as someone you're like, well, come on, I'm not going to be that.
I'm not going to be the 1 in a million, but 1 in 100.
1 in 100. It's like, holy shit, that's actually decent odds there. I mean, that's like.
Well, and when you could get other implants, the other thing that we talked about that I thought was pretty interesting too, and this is again something that's happened as this whole condition and the association with the implants has progressed, is that it's really important that if you are having these things removed, that you have a doctor who's really familiar with this, because it's not just go in and just take out the implant. I mean, so there's this capsule. It's basically in a capsule, and if there's fluid in there, if there's tissue adhesion, you need to make sure that you get every single bit of that out, because if you let some fluid and some of this tissue remain, you can get a recurrence. And if you clean it all out the first time, you have really good odds of survival. But if you don't, and it comes back and it metastasizes, that's not what you want to be doing. So if people are getting these things out, I mean, make sure this isn't just, any plastic surgeon is going to put in implants, okay? But taking out an implant when you have this condition, you want somebody who's really a specialist in this.
Yeah. And we've heard some horror stories about some plastic surgeons. Leaving with their utensils in there. It's crazy stories, but especially when it comes to plastic surgery and when it's this severity and this how serious this is, definitely make sure you're picking correctly.
Yeah. Well, and also we were talking about a lot of patients have decided to have them taken out prophylactically. So basically they realize they have this implant. They don't have this condition diagnosed, but they would rather go ahead and take those implants out
Yeah.
right now.
1 in 100, I don't blame them.
Right. And then you don't have to worry about the situation where the condition already develops and you have to make absolutely sure basically you don't want to get cancer. And then even if you get the cancer out early, let's just avoid getting the cancer altogether, right?
Yeah.
It's better no cancer than early cancer. Better early cancer than late cancer. But,
Better no cancer than early cancer.
well, yeah, I guess that's a new saying, but so some people, and quite frankly, if I was in that situation, I think I would want him out. I mean, it feels, again, 1 in a million, maybe not 1 in 100.
Yeah, it's something you don't want to play around with, and I think it's tough too because I feel like with these plastic surgeries, you don't, a lot of them are kind of low cost, right? And they are easily accessible, and there's a lot of people that do them, and so I think it's a kind of not counterintuitive, but it's not down that same kind of thought process where it's like you do have to spend more money taking it out early, and
although they have programs to assist with that, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
I
good,
think
that's
we
good.
actually talked about those on one of the prior episodes, and those are 5 and 39. Just to kind of reiterate, I think probably the last one we talked about that new program that Allergan has in place. So I would, so go back and check that out if you have these things. If you don't know what you have, call your doctor, find out what you've got. If it's the textured Allergan implants,
yeah. What else you got for us?
NEC. So so the NEC cases, and these are the cases involving premature infants, premature babies, and being fed formula as opposed to mother's milk or donor milk. And this case, a big hot topic because just a couple of weeks ago there was the first verdict, and it was $60 million. Really sad case. I mean, we talked a lot about the attorneys who tried that case were there. They talked about it, showed pictures of the little baby Chance who had passed away. And these are going to be big cases. I mean, there's not tons of them because it's only premature infants who are fed formula. But, they're horrible cases. They're inevitably death or really extensive disability cases. And the important thing here is that having donor milk, or your breast milk decreases the risk by 80%. I mean, it's just huge.
Well, donor milk, breast milk, and then it's as long as it's not cow's milk, right?
Right. So it's the formula has cow's milk, and it's the cow's milk that causes the problem. And one of the things that the companies have argued are they're like, oh, this saves lives, and there's not enough donor milk. But and I wasn't really clear on this, but they're saying that there absolutely is, that there is not a need for this anymore. That there are, the infrastructure has been set up that on request and put your foot down, you can ensure that your baby doesn't. You just have to know. You have to know to say, I don't want my babies to have the formula.
Well, and it's tough too because you have to know that, and at times too, you probably have to disagree with the nurses. You have to disagree
or the doctors.
with the doctors.
Yeah, the doctors.
And that's hard.
It's really hard. But you know what? If you're ever going to do it, it's going to be for your baby.
For sure.
Because that mama bear thing comes out, and if you have any idea that this, that this could hurt your baby. And I thought it was kind of interesting because they were, one of the ways they described it, the companies are saying, other kids get NEC too. It's not just, the premature babies on the cow's milk. And they're saying, 90% of kids that get NEC are on the formula. And 90% of people who get cancer smoke.
My goodness.
Well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? But we're not going to say that smoking doesn't cause cancer.
Yeah.
So the numbers are there.
The numbers are there. It's so sad cases, and I mean it's so difficult because like we've discussed there's just a lack of information out there. I mean, when doctors and nurses, the people that you're relying on and you would assume would have this information, and they don't even have it.
Yeah,
it's tough stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And then just such a sad case. I mean, just seeing those photos, there were people in the room just in tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially while these are rare cases, once you get infants and babies and children involved in some of these, and you have a jury, I mean, these defendants are in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's there's additional trials coming up. And yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, the numbers are there, the studies are there. I don't see how you lose these cases.
Yeah.
And and like you said, very sympathetic.
Well, if they're that these are active cases, so if this is something anyone has experienced, because I mean it is such a specific situation too, where if you have had an infant child that has had this condition, then I mean that the odds are that it's connected or correlated in some way. So definitely reach out.
Yeah, and the thing too is that I think a lot of parents don't realize that, in the sense that they know that the baby's high risk because it was born prematurely, and so it's scary.
Yeah.
And there of course was a chance that the baby would die anyway. So they just assume that's kind of the course of events. They don't realize that the baby would have had an 80% better chance of survival had it had donor milk, and not the formula. But again, that one we talked quite a bit about that in episode 4. So if you're pregnant, if your baby's premature, demand donor milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got time for one more topic here.
Yeah. Suboxone is another one of the newer litigations. We talked about that in episode 31. And this is the film that they were using for opioid withdrawal. Was in a pill, and then it was about the patent was about to expire. They decided to use the film, and the film's causing just really devastating dental injuries, tooth loss, really horrendous injuries. So that's a really new case heating up. Quite active. The MDL was just formed in January of this year, about 136 cases, but that's moving pretty quickly. So another one of those. There's a lot of people out there probably affected. And we can certainly next episode talk about a couple other. Those are probably some of the most of them. There's a few other, but we can certainly get into that next week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about hernia mesh. I can't believe we have to at least say the word hernia mesh, because I don't think we've had an episode, at least in the last 49, that we haven't talked about it a little bit. So we'll do some more updating next week. But a lot happening, in these cases, and you just never know who might need to know this.
Yeah, a lot of updates. Definitely appreciate you sharing that with us and going to Vegas and learning about.
I had to go to Vegas there. I guess I can sacrifice myself for the good of our listeners.
Yeah, well, and I mean it shows why these are so important. As jokingly as it is, I mean this is some really important information, and I think it's good for especially the victims of these cases to be hearing updates, because I mean these things take so long, and you hear there's just such long times of silence at times that it's nice hearing updates, and that it is being worked on, because it is, even if they aren't seeing it. And if anyone has any questions about these cases or about cases that we've mentioned in the past, feel free to throw them in the comments section. You can DM us if you wanted to be a little bit more private. You can also email us at showardlaw or podcast@showardlaw.com. And we'll obviously keep everything anonymous, and we're happy to answer your questions. And I think it's good for, who knows, maybe your question will help other people out there. But with that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us. We're happy to be back. We do have a big announcement. We did just release a second YouTube channel. If you didn't know we had a YouTube channel, we do. Showard Law Firm. We released a second one. It's Showard Law Clips. It's going to be a channel focused a little bit more on our clips, on the exciting stuff, the funny stuff, as well as just a little bit more casual, and maybe post some videos about bloopers, vlogs, who knows.
We don't have bloopers.
Of course.
We don't ever mess anything up.
Yeah. But we would really appreciate it if you could check us out there, subscribe, comment. If you see a thumbs in the bottom of your screen, hopefully click the thumbs up. If you see stars like the ones on my shirt, throw 5 on there. It really does go a long way. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Same day, same time.
Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.